Welcome to this video. You guys do not need me to tell you that rugby players need strong legs, but what are the best ways to develop them, the best ways to grow them? We're going to be running through, this is just a bit of fun, but can also give you a bit of insight to the way that I program, how I train my rugby athletes and also myself. But obviously, there are no bad exercises. Everything can be used in a specific reason. But what we're talking about here, criteria-wise, is going to be something that gives you that you can load a lot, you can progress easily, that's generally well tolerated, is in a range of motion that is really big, which is really good for muscle growth and hitting strength over deeper ranges, and or relevant to your sport, which is rugby. Now I'm going to be a little bit biased here. Everyone's going to be a bit biased with some of the things that they choose. That doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, but this will guaranteed give you some good ideas for how to get your programming done. So we're not going to do this in any particular order. What I have in terms of my sections are going to be do this, like this is in pretty much every one of my programs, either all the time or at some point over the year. This is good, it's something that is really good, and I definitely recommend. Now then we've got a this works, because it's still going to do the job. You're still going to get really good results, but I probably prefer some of the things from above. And then in the bottom here, not the best. I just think that there are going to be better options in most cases. And lastly, it's not really legs, not really strength. So I did ask a couple of you guys for some questions, what exercises are going to fit in where, and some of them are just not leggy enough, or the legs aren't the determining factor for me to rank them here. So it could be a really good exercise, but I'm not going to rank them at the top just because it's not enough legs. So here we have Smith machine or any kind of calf raise, okay? I think it is a fantastic exercise. I think a lot of the time that it's overemphasized because especially when you're in season, you're doing a lot of sprinting. Sometimes it just isn't a lot of time to build up your calves, maybe in there once a week. If you are going to do something, I'd go for something like this where you can get a good stretch and you've got some good control and balance, but you're going to be doing pogo hops, sprinting, all kinds of things which are the most important thing for your calves. So I would focus on those most of the time. Maybe put this, if you need to build up your calves, do a lot of it in the off season. But yeah, it definitely works. Next, we have a deadlift. Now, not any deadlift, but a conventional deadlift. Now, I would put this in not the best because I really don't find, I don't put this in my athletes' programs. But there is no reason why you can't chuck it in the off season. There's no reason why you can't have it there at some point. And I think it's underrated in terms of everybody bashes it and you cannot use it. You can absolutely use it. I think there are better options, and just because it's underrated, I'm going to put it, and it's bashed on, I'm going to put it here. I would probably prefer, if you do something, to do a deficit conventional deadlift. Why not go for it in the off season, go for a little bit more range of motion. Here we have a Cossack squat. Now, any of you guys who know me know I love a Cossack squat. We're working a different plane of motion to what we usually are when we do our forwards and backward lunges or our squats, our RDLs. This works laterally and gets a really good stretch on the adductor and works the legs in a different way that you're used to. Underrated, S tier for me, without a doubt. Now forward lunges. This is actually forward and a walking lunge. I think they're all right. They got a very specific use, but I really don't program them very often. So they definitely work. They can be in there somewhere, but I prefer, as you'll see, another way of loading them because there are other you know what, I'm going to put it down here. I just don't think it's the best. There are other options that you can do. Here we have a glute ham raise. I love this. I love this so much. I think this is absolutely fantastic. A lot of people want to build up their glutes, their hamstrings and their calves. The glute ham raise does exactly this. A lot of people just tell you to do Nordics. Most people can't do a Nordic effectively or slow enough, so I definitely recommend that you try strengthening them up like this, and you can also do just negatives to get the same effect as you do with the Nordics. So this is a good morning. I actually think it's a really good exercise. Underrated in terms of nobody really does them, but if I'm honest, for rugby, I just don't tend to use it. I think there are other ways of doing the same job. This, in terms of hitting your legs, it's positioned really high up. It can hit quite a lot of the erectors and the back. I would much prefer, if you want to hit the glutes and hamstrings, to hit an RDL, but it's still an option that you could use. Hamstring curl. Now, I'm going to put this in this works, but only for one reason. Now, I would rather you build your hamstrings up doing your RDLs, your sprinting, your glute ham raises and things like that, and I just don't see the need for this too much. However, if you don't have access to a glute ham raise or a Nordic, or you're not strong enough, then you can do a 2 up 1 down method to eccentrically overload on the hamstrings, and I think that is a really good option to use. But aside from that, yeah. This is an Atg squat. Do I think it's S tier? No, not really, because a lot of people they get into that bottom position, they'll relax, and the amount of weight that they end up using compared to if they came a little bit higher is just so much less. Also, most players just can't get into these positions anyway. Yes, we can look at improving the range of motion, but for most people, I think there's other alternatives for the squat which might suit you a little bit better, especially if you're in season. So this is really good. Wouldn't argue against it, but there might be some other options. Hip thrust, I'm going to put this in the S tier category, in the top tier category, because it doesn't tend to produce much soreness, so it might be useful something midweek. It can be used in season. The glutes and the hamstrings, especially the glutes, and pushing backwards in that motion is exactly what you do when you're sprinting, and this is the glutes of the sprinter's muscle. So if you want to get faster, get hip thrust in there. Hyperextension, I think this is a little bit underrated, as in nobody, again, uses it at all, but I think there are other things that can do the job better. If you are going to load this, you might want to try holding something up higher so that you evolve a little bit more the shoulders and back. It's still going to be hard on your hamstrings, but if you're looking to get hamstrings in their shortened position, you might be better off with a hip thrusts or a glute ham raise, and then lengthened positions, your RDLs. So this is a back squat to parallel or a low bar back squat. Now I am actually a really big fan of this. If you cannot, so this is right in the top, if you cannot get into like a decent depth squat position, unless you're in a low bar position, then go for the low bar position. I like my athletes to use a bit of a hybrid approach, so not super low like the powerlifters, not all the way up so that they're really struggling to hit that depth. This tends to be something that is really well tolerated, and you can do it at this, or you could also do it, like I'm going to show this next exercise, to a box, but a low box, which will also be an S tier. I'm not talking about 3/4 squats. You guys are ego lifting too much. Hit that 90, use it as a dead stop, and then come back up. 90, not 90, hit that parallel. 90 degrees is a little bit higher because it's measured at the knee angle. Leg press, I just tend not to use it that much, so I'm going to put it down here. I think there are other options. If I want to build up my leg strength, I'm probably going to do some of these exercises at the top where you're also balancing and coordinating your body. And if you had to isolate something, or just focus on the legs, maybe you just do an isolation, because that does that little better. These here are above 90 degree or above parallel step ups, and I really dislike them. I think that they can be useful, but again, a lot of this force, there's not much range of motion. There's that you can be loaded up a lot, but a lot of people are out of balance. So this right here, I think, is overrated. I see a lot of people do this, and I don't think it gives that much of a stimulus, considering how much weight they're chucking on there and all this stuff. It's not really going to grow anything. You might get some stabilization at the hip. You're trying to brace and control all of that, but I think there are just better exercises that do that job anyway. I don't necessarily think this is something that you need to work on too much. If you need to be really strong in that position, at that kind of angle, maybe you're a front row forward, you need to get good in the scrummaging position, you might be better off just loading something up even heavier, like I'm going to show you in a minute, where you're just not as unstable, or find exercises that are really specific and unstable if you want to go down that route instead of trying to combine the two. I do prefer a little bit anyway, the deeper step up. So this is going to build a little bit more muscle. You're not going to grow you're not going to have as much weight on there in general, but as an exercise for building the leg strength, as opposed to being limited by some of the upper body and the core, this is going to be a good exercise, and it's been shown to be really good for the glutes. Here we have a rack pull. Really not a fan of the rack pull. Maybe, again, if you're a front row forward in a really specific situation. However, is that going to isolate or work a lot on the legs, or is there going to be a whole lot of upper body involvement? There is a whole lot of upper body involvement here, upper back, posterior chain, a bit like if you did a trap bar deadlift. I just think that there are better options, and it's not something that I never program for my athletes. Here we have a reverse lunge. Now, unlike the forward lunge, we're really loading up that back calf, and that's where I think a lot of that value is in there. So I think this is good. I think that a lot of players are way too weak and unstable with single leg or unilateral or split stances, so I'm a big fan of that. But maybe it's not quite heavy enough compared to some of your squats to be in the S tier. Here we have a B stance RDL or a split stance RDL. Now I'm actually going to count this as any split stance exercise. Okay, any split stance. You can split stance pretty much everything, and I'm going to put it up here in the S tier because we just don't load ourselves that much. You guys spend a lot of time with bilateral squatting, Romanian deadlifting, trap bar deadlifting, and this is a fantastic way to switch up the stimulus a little bit, load each knee, each hip, each leg differently, and get some tension going through that back calf, get a bit of an isometric going in there, which is exactly what you're going to be doing when you're out there on the pitch sprinting and changing direction. So I think that's really valuable, strengthening the ankles and calves. Here we have a stiff leg deadlift, underrated, but I do think that there are better options. So I'm going to chuck it in this one here. I think if you've got the range of motion to do it, fantastic. In reality, you're probably getting the same benefits that you do with an RDL. You're just going through a dead pause, but then you could just pause. Machine squats, really got a bit of a pet peeve here. Again, I think that if you're going to use a machine, maybe just use it to isolate, because you're trying to pick something really specific here. If you're going to go for bigger compound movements, I should prefer you to get the coordination benefits, moving your body through space and time, not having it forced. And I think I just prefer that as a bit of a, compared to some of these machines. When we look at the push press or the thruster, it's not really leg strength exercise. Quarter squats, I'm going to put it in this works. A lot of people use them way too much, but if you are not already squatting a lot of weight, like over 2 times your body weight, I'd rather you just focus on the full squat, build more muscle, which later on will help you produce more force. This really isn't going to build you much muscle. It can be used in season by a lot of the elites or the professionals, because they've already got a lot of muscle. They don't have that much more muscle to build, and they're trying to stay very specific with the stimulus and very low with the fatigue, or at least very specific with the fatigue. You guys don't need to do that. You can get away with making more progress, building more muscle, getting more strength, and you're probably not going to experience as much fatigue because you're not lifting as much weight as them. Here we have a Bulgarian split squat. I think it works. I think this is good. It does work. It is good. It's overrated because all we ever see is some of these programs a squat, an RDL, a Bulgarian split squat, and that's like the perfect leg day. But you've been doing that for so long. Why not challenge your body, the lower body, to produce force in a slightly different way? You're going to get heaps of benefits out of that. I think again, this is another reverse lunge. Leg extension. So it works. I never ever really do it because a lot of the time, if I just want somebody to grow bigger legs, I'll end up doing more of the volume of some of these bigger, harder exercises. And they get other benefits that come with it, like you do with your compound exercises, without needing to do loads of these isolations. I just tend to find that you can put some in there, maybe if it's in rehab, or if it's a very specific player who's got like a very, they really need to bring up their quads for whatever reason, then maybe you can get in there on this, or maybe on the hamstring curls as well. This is definitely in a do this category. If you have the equipment and the setup, I think, at the top of my head, Hatfield squat or Hatfield split squat here. You can do it rear foot elevated. You can do it with just a normal squat. You can do it split squatted, all kinds of ways. And much like when you do the reverse lunge, you're getting in the back of that calf and that Achilles some tension, which is fantastic. You're loading the legs differently, which will be different to what a lot of you guys do. And if you are holding on and supporting yourself, you've now taken away the fact that you're less stable and less balanced in a split stance, and you've now got more stability and you can produce a load of force. It's just brilliant. Here we have a Nordic. I think it works, but I don't think, as I mentioned, a lot of people get the benefits out of it because they're just not strong enough. If you are strong enough, brilliant exercise, but make sure that you can scale it. Here we have a Romanian deadlift. I don't think anybody needs convincing that that's one of the S tiers. Trap bar deadlift, I'm going to put under. I don't think that it is enough legs, just because there's a hell of a lot of upper body in there. I know a lot of people, myself included, who are really strong legs but cannot trap bar deadlift as much because their upper back and their upper body just can't quite handle it. And so for me, I'm just going to put it on there. And here we have any kind of pin squat. I think these are completely underrated, and I think that everybody should give them a go. If you're used to just normal squatting, try a pin squat instead of a pause squat or instead of a box squat. It's just another variation to add, and going from a dead stop, producing force from there, so hard. It's the hardest part of the movement. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I didn't waffle too much. Obviously, first one that I've ever done, but this should really give you guys some ideas about how I program and how I would like a lot of you to program. For the most part, in a lower body or a full body workout, I'll tend to have 2, maybe 3 of these, and then maybe some other little isolations here. Nothing more than that. It's not like we're looking to do everything all of the time. pick a couple or a few for the week, do them, change them up, rinse and repeat. Get good, get strong in all kinds of ranges of motion, all kinds of movements, and with loads of exercises, and you'll be a beast because you can use that force in all those different ways when you're out there on the pitch. Rugby is just all over the place. You're producing force this way, that way, here, unstable, stable, holding on to somebody. There's just so much going on. Yes, you can't train for all that chaos, but if you give yourself the biggest base in terms of movement literacy, strength, you're going to be all over it, and you're going to be the best player that you can. Remember, if you want to get involved with some of the stuff that I run group coaching, I run personalized programs, I've got one-to-one coaching, and I'd love to be a part of your journey. Check out the rest of my stuff. Let me know if you have any questions.